Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to it's week 6, but it's also covering week 5 material as well. So there was a little bit of confusion with some of the activities. So they span over the 2 weeks. So we'll see what we get through this evening. But as I've said, if you haven't had an opportunity to get it all done, not a problem. Completely understandable under the circumstances. It's just lovely to see everyone's gorgeous faces there. Yes, that's you. I'm talking about you guys. Lovely to see you. All right, so the usual considerations this evening with confidentiality when we are online. And for those of you who are watching this recording, that's something that is very important when we're in a Zoom session, especially if it is being recorded, to make sure that you don't use people's names and the names of organisations that you've worked for or anything like that when you are sharing your stories. So welcome to all of those who are here, and also to those who are watching the clip in the comfort of your homes. Okay, so a little bit of a run through of what we're going to do this evening. That's me working from home, my expectation, and then what it is like in reality. I wish that was me, actually. I've been super busy at the moment. And of course, I've got all of your amazing PowerPoints to mark as well. So, woohoo! I'm excited, pumped. All right, so welcome to Zoomland for those of you who haven't experienced it before or may have used Zoom to record assignments but haven't actually participated in Zoom as a learning forum. So just a run through of what we're going to be covering in this particular session. We're going to do a quick introduction to Zoom, and these wonderful external students who are experienced Zoomers will be my guinea pigs. We're going to talk about observations in your learning environment, reflecting on those 2 observation clips that you would have watched and responded to the questions with. Then we're going to talk a little bit about research skills and I guess turning those observations into inferences, but then moving on into future weeks, we're going to be talking about turning inferences into reflections as well, and focusing on that bigger research a little bit as well. And then there's going to be an opportunity for our usual Brady Bunch catch up. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom, we need to make sure that we keep our mics muted when we're not talking, so that cuts down on the background noise and it makes it a lot more pleasant for everyone else. So if you want to also use the chat button, everyone, those of you who are here, can you send me a little hello message using the chat button? Just so I know that you're all familiar with it. Excellent. Thank you, Georgia. Susie. Well done. So you can use the chat function as well to type in if you're not comfortable with actually sharing verbally. So now you can also reply yes or no to any of my questions posed as well using the chat function. Or if you need to, you can tell me that you're going away for a period of time. So also there is a reaction button too. So everyone, if you could give me a thumbs up using the reaction button. Beautiful. Excellent. Okay, so I've added an extra one just for this particular moment in time in Zoom, just making sure everyone's fully clothed at all times. I know at the moment we're all hanging out at home, you know, just feeling very comfortable. So for those of you who slothing has become a little bit of a habit, just make sure that you're fully clothed. I haven't had anyone yet. In winter we get lots of Ugg boots and, you know, you can see Paris is eating her dinner and we have lots of people, you know, with their children in the backgrounds and all sorts of things. So it's very, very casual. Please make sure you have a go and join in one of our sessions. They can be lots of fun. And most importantly, I guess it's also an opportunity for us to catch up as well. So it's a fabulous platform for doing things like sharing PowerPoint content. We can share Word documents, all sorts of online resources. We also have the function that our external groups have used before to break out into breakout groups as well. So like we do in class, in our internal classes, we can do group work, so small group work as well. So there is also a raise your hand function as well. That's in the participants section. And when we have really big groups, that's something that can be really useful. But tonight we've got 8 participants, so we don't really need to do that. But in some Zoom sessions, some tutors will use that function because, you know, you can have 40 students at one time, so it can get a little bit hectic. Okay, so so we've talked about the chat button and we've talked about just needing to unmute when you want to speak. So try to attend the Zoom sessions when you can. It definitely makes the tutorials more interesting and more engaging, and of course it does develop that community of practice, which at this moment in time is really important, and making sure we all catch up, you know, checking on each other's mental health and well-being as well. That's really important. Okay, another important aspect, if you could be prepared, so have done the activities as well, so that you can participate in all of the discussion and sharing your perspectives as well. It makes it much more interesting and a lot more fun. Now, I've just put up here as well, you can see on the slide, there is the function here for virtual background. And so for those of you who are here this evening, if you have a look on your tab, you'll see mute, and then you'll see stop video. There's a little arrow pointing down. If you click on the arrow and click on choose virtual background, click on that one, and then you've got choices of all different backgrounds that you may want to use. So I'm in a bit of a, you know, classy sort of mood at the moment. I've got my groovy red couch, or I might want to go a bit 60s. So these are ones that I've just downloaded, but the normal functions, oh yep, everyone's, oh yep, Belinda's into it, excellent. So Belinda, you probably, have you ticked the button that says, I have a green screen? Yeah, so that's why your face has gone a little bit, yeah.
Even if I untick it, it's still, hang on, maybe that's the other tick box.
That's interesting. So there are lots of different options. Belinda has got the bridge. There's also the nice green grass, some sort of video ones, and one of my faves, the ocean. That's lovely. Oh, Chim, I like that one. Nice, very nice. Susie, cool.
Angela, I don't have, I can see virtual background as an option.
Yeah.
Then all I have is none.
Oh, is there a little plus button there?
Yeah, and it didn't.
So what you can do is you can download some images and put in the background. You know, right. I've got my sunken lounge room here. Yeah, a couple of different ones.
Mine won't work.
Okay, you might want to have a play around with it and see what you can do, what you can come up with. You know, it's just a bit of fun, and it's also good because some of you may have housemates at home or children, and they may not necessarily want to be part of your Zoom session, especially if it's being recorded. Okay, so just a bit of fun. All right, so a check-in. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, everyone's okay, that I guess there are lots of different ways that we've been trying to maintain our sanity, and I've been blown away by some of the freaky attempts of people to keep themselves and their families amused. Two of my faves for this week was the first one, the Gloria Gaynor song, I Will Survive. Has everyone seen that? Oh my goodness, it is hilarious. And I love that song as well. So I put the links there, and I've also put them in the Zoom chat for you to watch later on. But if anyone has any others that they've come up with or come across, please feel free to share in the chat. You can copy and paste. This is my children's favourite, the ping pong obstacle course. You know, all the things that we do to try and keep ourselves amused and sane at the moment. So make sure if you've got any links, you share them, but most definitely make sure that they're clean. This is definitely a PG tutorial. All right, so let's get into some of the content for this week. So in Jen's seminar, for those of you who have had the opportunity to have a look at it, she talked about big R research and little R research. So can anyone tell me what the difference is for those of you who had the opportunity to watch the videos? Big R and little R research. Do we remember what that was?
The big R is the formal research.
Yep.
The little R is just like the observations that you might make in the classroom.
Excellent. Thanks, Belinda. Definitely. Yeah. So big R research, I think Jen shared some of the research that some of the tutors have done in this particular unit. So research that involves formal ethics process, specific methodology, data collection, and also data analysis methods. So little R research, this will involve observations in your learning environment, as Belinda said. So this could be observations during placement, for example. So on how the environment is set up, how resources are used, and the approaches and strategies that are used by your supervising teacher. So you would be doing detailed observations of the environment and your supervising teacher. But very importantly, you would also be observing children and students in the learning environment as well. So collecting data to develop a really good understanding of their interests, of their needs, strengths, of their particular understandings, I guess, of frustrations that they may be having, challenges, and of course, as we've talked about before, their ways of learning. So of course, this is linked directly to Standard 1 of the APSTs, Know Students and How They Learn. So over the next 4 years, you're going to be working very hard on your placements to practice and refine these skills. So some of the things that we need to think about when we are doing observations, that it's very important that we have a specific focus and that we use effective, objective observation. So not subjective, it needs to be objective. So what we see and what we hear, collecting facts. And also, as we have mentioned in previous tutorials as well, the importance of listening skills. So not just listening, but hearing what our students say. So these observation skills, they're going to be some of the most valuable tools in your future teaching teacher toolbox. Okay, so in your preparation PowerPoint in week 5, you were provided with 2 practice observation clips, and I emailed them to you today as well, just so that you had those direct links. Jen also gave you some questions to frame your observations. So when observing children and students or your supervising teacher, it's important that you have that very clear and specific focus. So as Jen said, a purpose or an intent. And also, as Jen pointed out, when you viewed the moonwalking bear clip, when there's so much going on, it's very easy to miss really important aspects. So if you haven't watched that clip, go back and watch it. It's very interesting. I've kind of spoilt it for you now, though, haven't I? So it also tells us that it's very possible to view the same event from many different perspectives as well. But as I said, having a specific observation focus or perspective in mind is vital. All right, so you also need to choose a format. So the kind of tool that you would use when you're recording your observation. So Jen has suggested there are two different tools that we're going to use for this particular, the two observations. So yeah, this was, so for the first observation, your focus was around student engagement in asking questions. So you were asked to watch the clip and record data in a seating template. So your goal was to use the data to ensure that all students were involved in the questioning process. So the seating template or the chart looked something like this. Did anyone get the opportunity to do this, to fill it out?
Yeah.
Paris?
Yeah, I did. A lot of it was just the teacher asking questions to the students. I filled out on a Word document. And then I think at the end there was maybe one question that a student asked the teacher. But yeah, mainly a lot of questions towards the students to kind of shape and build foundation of the lesson.
Excellent. So what did you think of this actual tool, this data collection tool? Do you think it was useful?
I think it's easy, and I think in that situation, you just want to be able to just put a little diagram. So yeah, definitely very, very easy to use and helpful.
So it was really simple, very specific, and so it's objective too. So it's all about just collecting the data. So some of the questions that Jen wanted us to look at, so what, now what, and the focus was around who asks and who answers questions in the whole group questioning sequences. So Paris, what did you see? What did you notice about the data that you collected? And I think also, who else was it that said that they'd had a look at it? Was it Belinda?
I didn't write it down perfectly though using the template, so I've got rough notes.
That's okay, that's all right. So you've done more anecdotal records rather than the template, and they're just as useful. So it's a different form of data collection, of observation. But let's just start with Paris. What did you notice about the data? Were there any trends that you noticed?
Yes, so just looking at my notes. So basically I said there was a large range of questions being asked over the classroom. That majority of it was one-sided, meaning that there wasn't really that kind of, hey, have you got any questions for me? Like, it's more like, I've got questions for you kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then I
So this second one was, what key questions do you have about the data? What questions did it raise? So, you know, the objective was to find out who asks and who answers questions in the whole group questioning sequence. So did you find that there were further questions raised from collecting that data?
I had some questions about, did she have a method as to the order of or the order of the way she asked the questions? Because I know she then asked someone to come up and then demonstrate on the board, and then asked them specifically questions there. What was the reasoning behind that? Why didn't she give the kids the opportunity, I guess, to ask questions, like define, hey, have you got any questions? Did she expect that the students would ask automatically? questions because the classroom seemed quite a comfortable environment. They were the things that popped into.
Okay, excellent. So, you know, they were the kind of things that you were inferring, and, you know, you actually were talking there about specific data that supported your inferences as well. So, you know, some really good understandings that you've made there. Well done, Paris. We had a comment from Kylie on the chat that the seating tool would work well in a school classroom, but not so much in early childhood. That's a good point. Have we got any other early childhood people here? No? Kylie, did you want to expand on that at all? You've got your mic on. Beautiful.
Sorry. Just for in a school, they kind of tend to, well, I know now they're changing it, but for the most part, they sit in one spot and they don't move. Early childhood little buggers don't stop moving. So it's a little bit harder to do that. But I think I was actually trying to think, if you were doing a placement in an early childhood, you wouldn't know the children. So you'd somehow very quickly have to figure out who's who.
Oh, definitely. And that's in that first week, that's key to really getting to know the students and the children, to, you know, to find out their names, to remember their names so that you can call them by their names, but also, you know, to develop some understandings. And you will do this through observation, but you'll also need to work with your supervising teacher to develop some further understandings, because your placements are usually going to be 2 to 3 weeks for at the most. So you really need to work with your supervising teacher to develop understandings of the students and for them to share the data that they have collected previously. So of course you have a good understanding of the students' prior knowledge. So if you were a pre-service teacher, what would your next step be, I guess? What would you like to change or modify? So as a change agent in your classroom, what might you change or modify or extend? Any thoughts?
I actually struggled with this because it just seems such a polished performance, if you want to say. Yeah, I struggled with it. I don't know what I'd really
I don't think
change.
she gave the students enough time to even answer her sometimes. She was quite quick to move them on if they didn't. Like one girl, I think the first girl that she called up and where to put it, she mustn't have got the answer right or something, and she pretty much just sat back down again.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that I felt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a girl at the back, and she answered the question, but then she sort of wasn't satisfied because she didn't give her the right explanation of or what she was hoping for with the protractor on the board. And so then she just asked Vesey to come up and let him sort of run the show. So yeah, I felt she cut off that other girl and didn't even let her have a go when she was on track.
Well, her goal was to use the data to ensure that all students were involved in the questioning process. And so I guess what you're saying is you could extend it even more, because from the observations, it wasn't just students being involved in the questioning process, but it's how she was involving and how she was extending those students as well. So that's a really good observation. So that's something that you would change or possibly modify or extend as well. Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So this one was in more of an early childhood setting, and the focus on this one was the use of open-ended questions by your supervising teacher, so to promote positive interactions. So the goal here was to expand your observation and listening skills to promote positive interactions. So that was the why and the what. So the observation tool that was used this time, as I mentioned before, were anecdotal records. So this is a narrative account of a specific event. And so they can be brief notes on the run, you know, post-it notes. As an early childhood teacher, I would have a bum bag and I would have my post-it notes in there, and I would write little notes about specific children on the run very quickly, and they were just short and brief. Sometimes you could write up an anecdotal record after the fact as well, possibly not as accurate, but you could also do more detailed accounts as well, possibly in real time. But generally, anecdotal records are briefer. You've also got running records, so they're extended records and narrative where you would write down everything that a specific child said or did. And this would be in the case where you're looking at, for example, social interactions, or it might be language, or it could be cognitive abilities or gross and fine motor. So it's when you're really looking at specific children's development. So first up, did anyone get the opportunity to write an anecdotal record? Kylie, did you get to that within the sandpit observation? Paris? Paris, did you get the chance to? No, that's okay.
Well, I looked at it and I just kind of freaked out of it because I was like, oh, childcare, like that's all. And then I kind of didn't overly understand, how in depth it was going to have to be, because the example kind of went into, it reminded me of my old creche books. They used to have a book and then each day a carer would write something. So I'm guessing that's that.
No, an anecdotal record is more, so the goal was basically that you wanted to find out some information about how you could expand your observation skills to promote positive interactions. So an anecdotal record would just be jotting down possibly how your supervising teacher interacted with the students, some of the open-ended questions that they may have used. So just brief notes. So you might have done multiple anecdotal observations. So as it says, written in past tense. So what strategies does my supervising teacher use to observe and promote positive interaction? So basically, that's exactly what you would be noting. You would be observing specific strategies. So in this case, there was a lot going on, so you can see the importance of having that very definite focus. So if you do get the opportunity to, I'd like you to go back and actually have a go at writing a few anecdotal observations, especially those of you who are early childhood and primary, but even secondary. It's the opportunity to really develop some understandings, and anecdotal records, they're narratives, so there's a little bit more detail as opposed to just a checklist or a template or a table as we used in the previous example. So did anyone at all get a chance to write down any anecdotal records? No, that's okay. No, all perfectly good.
Sorry, can I just ask a quick question, because I do want to have a go at this.
Yeah.
But when it's saying accounts of a specific event, incident, and behaviour, basically you take note on exactly what they're doing at the time. For example, in that video, the carer wasn't really looking over the other way, and then all of a sudden there was this kid playing with something that could potentially cause injury. It didn't. But from that, would you say from that I've learned you've got to have your vision quite proactive? Would that be an example?
No, but that is a good example of what you shouldn't do, because you're making an inference. So you would need to specifically look at the facts. So you would write down what you saw and what you heard. So exactly what the supervising teacher said. So in this case, we're looking at the use of open-ended questions, for example. So you would listen carefully to what the supervising teacher said, or you would look at the strategies that the supervising teacher was using to assist those young children with their interactions with each other. So you'd be looking at the questioning and you would be looking at specific strategies. So facts, we need to be objective rather than making inferences. So after we've made those observations, you would then look at them and then analyze them, where you would make some inferences, and you may want to relate it to some theory, some child development theory as well. Or possibly to the standards, to the professional standards, seeing how your supervising teacher is using best practice in those particular incidences. Okay, so I'd like you to have a go at it, and because what I'm saying is it's not easy. It's something that does take a lot of practice to be objective. I remember when I was an undergraduate, specifically in early childhood, in child development, we had a task where we had to go out on placement, and we just did so many observations, and we'd come back and our lecturer would just pick them apart. You know, that's an inference, that's an inference. You've got to be objective. So what you see and what you hear. It's not what you think may be happening.
Okay.
As I said, it takes practice, but that was a really good point you made, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so we kind of can't really discuss that if we haven't done one, but what I would like you to do is, once you've completed those observations, and for those of you at home as well, I want you to go and think about, what did you notice? What did you wonder? So what key questions do you have about the data, and what further questions did it raise? But I think one of the important things that we need to think about is, what questions would you have for your supervising teacher based on that observation? You know, especially, you know, you may want your supervising teacher to clarify a specific observation, or possibly a strategy that they used. You might want them to clarify the reasons behind that. So especially when we're observing our supervising teacher, we need to think about what further questions we might be able to use to assist our understandings, and also for us to think critically.
And so I think sometimes, I just wanted to say, sometimes it's what the teachers don't do that you want to know about.
Definitely.
Like, why didn't you address a particular behaviour because they know something about the child that you don't? That kind of thing. I think sometimes not just only what you see, but what they didn't do helps a lot too.
Excellent, because of course they, from their previous observations, their understandings of the child, the understanding of the child's particular context, their temperament, their prior knowledge, they would have a good indication, that would give them a good indication of the reasons behind specific behaviours. And as I said before, you really need to pick your supervising teacher's brains to find out exactly what is happening with those individual children. So one of the really important things going out on your placements, and this is something that you'll talk about a lot in future units, but is to develop good relationships with your supervising teacher. So you do feel comfortable, that you develop trust and a good rapport, so you can ask those questions. Anything else? Thanks, Kylie. That was a really good comment. Anyone else? I'm just checking our chat to make sure I haven't missed anyone. Nope. Excellent. Okay. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, an observation can't stand alone. So this is an objective observation. It's what you've seen, it's what you heard, so you have to interpret it. So your interpretation and your analysis, it's going to demonstrate your understanding of what is meaningful and also what's significant about what you've observed. So learning as a teacher, it's highly involved and it's certainly not going to happen instantly. To be a really good teacher, it takes continuous, thoughtful, reflective practice. And as you can see on the slide, John Dewey's famous quote, "We don't learn from experience. What we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience." So the next step is to turn any inferences that we make into reflections. And this is something that we're going to look at in more detail in the week 7 seminar. So when you come back from your 2-week extended break. And this is going to relate directly as well to your second assessment task. So I'd like you to actually think about, for those of you that did have the opportunity to do the tasks or the preparation tasks, or even just thinking about them, I want you to think about what kind of research skills that you may have used in this process, and also in the analysis of the observation as well. Have a little read of those. So some of them, obviously, you may not have done, but being self-reflective about your beliefs, assumptions, and potential biases, it's something that you may have reflected on when you're observing, because as I said, it's really difficult to be objective, and we do come to observation with biases or potential biases and assumptions that we're going to make that are based on our beliefs, on our prior knowledge, our understandings, on our culture as well. So they're things that we need to think about in the back of our minds when we are interpreting our observations. Did anyone, this particular one here, identify and read high quality scholarly work about education and critically think about implications for your own practice? So this is vital in terms of critical reflection. So we need to really think carefully and make links to theory. So another thing that we also need to do, of course, is to make links to the professional standards. So can we think of any particular standards that we might be able to link to here? Let's have a look. I apologise, it's quite small. So in terms of the 2 observations that we looked at, can you link them to the standards at all?
4.1, student participation.
Yep. So, so that was 1.1, did you say?
Sorry, 4.1.
4.1, sorry.
Yeah.
Support student participation. Yep. Identify strategies to support inclusive student participation and engagement. Definitely. Yeah. So for the first one, and I guess for the second as well, because we're looking at those positive interactions. What about over here, know students and how they learn? Because with our observations, this is that area, like to differentiate for individual students, we really need to have a good understanding of them. And those detailed, objective observations are vital here to really develop those good understandings of our students and how they learn. So their interests, their needs, their strengths, their understandings, any challenges that they're having.
I'd say 1.2, understand how our students learn. It's demonstrated in both, because I'm sure the teachers are thinking, okay, what does this do? How do they react to this?
Yeah, a good one. What about over in professional engagement?
(6.1).
Yeah. Identify and plan professional learning needs, definitely. What about 6.2, engage in professional learning and improve practice?
Definitely.
Yeah.
What about 6.4 as well?
Yeah. Apply professional learning and improve student learning. Yeah. So, you know, when we're doing our observations, when we're collecting our data, when we're sharing it with our colleagues, when we're looking at whole school data collection as well and doing comparing and contrasting, even things as simple as doing our exit tickets and things like that. So gathering information about, you know, evaluating students' understandings and the learning outcomes. You know, this is, you know, all part of observation. So observation can take many, many forms. Any others that really stood out to you there?
5.4 as well, interpreting student data.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so again, we're doing that same process where making those direct links to the professional standards, because as we said, it's a common language, it's a common understanding for all teachers. It's a national, they're national standards. So we always need to think about linking them back to it. And of course, when you're on your professional experience, you're going to be doing that constantly, because everything that you do and how you're being, you know, the observations that your supervising teacher will take of you, they're all going to be linked to the standards as well, and your progression table as well. Any questions? Okay. So the other point that in week 6 preparation tasks, Jen asked you to generate a question about education that you personally have an interest in. So I know how busy everyone's been, and it's been a pretty full-on couple of weeks. So I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't get to this. And as I said in my email today, the focus, I guess, was on the week 5 activities so that we could break them down in the tutorials. But did anyone have an opportunity to even think about this at this point? Yeah, Kylie?
Sorry. It's one that I ask all the time and I don't have an answer for it all, but is how do we get our primary students and our other students learning outside more?
Okay.
I don't hardly ever see any of them spending any learning time in an outdoor environment. That's
okay.
A little passion of mine, that's all, sorry.
Yeah, well, I guess that second one, how would we teach sustainability in, well, high school science? But are you talking about sustainability, or are you talking about children being physically active, or
any, to be honest,
Yeah.
any, either or. I know from prep to grade 3, sustainability really doesn't seem to be very active in the curriculum, but when they hit grade 4, bang, it comes back.
Yeah.
A really big gap for me personally from early childhood, where we live it, eat it, breathe it every day, and then the kids go to school from prep to grade 3, it doesn't seem to be part of their daily practice, which I think, considering the world we're in now, it kind of needs to be a bit more important.
Oh, definitely. So that's a fantastic example, Kylie. So you could take that, and what you would then do is you would use the library databases, and you would see if you could search for some articles using some keywords to help with your understandings. So I'd like all of you over the 2-week break to think about it. Like, you could, if you wanted to, even use one of those particular questions if it's something that inspires you. But Kylie's obviously got something that, you know, is pretty important to her and that she's reflected on it in the past. So it would be good if it could be something that is significant to your particular interests. But yeah, I'd like you to follow the directions that Jen has given you. And over those 2 weeks, I'd like you to, it's sort of some homework for you to, because this directly links to assessment task 2. So I'd also, we're not going to go into any detail about that this evening, but what I want you to do, and everyone who's watching this from home as well, I want you to have a good look at the task sheet and the rubric, and come into your Zoom tutorials, your learning forums, with some questions for your tutor. So make sure you have a really good look at that task sheet, because as you can see, it really is about research and reflection. So just taking that step further. So any questions at all from anyone at this point? Any questions about the unit overview? Because it has changed. If you have a look on Blackboard, you will see that, so week 6, we're in week 6 now, but then you've got 2 weeks of your extended mid-semester break, and then we come back on week beginning the 20th of April, and then we'll be reflecting on learners and learning. So Jen will have those activities up there on Blackboard for you to participate in for that learning forum. So I'd like you to make sure you get those done. You've got a bit of time over the break. If you could really make sure that you engage with those resources that she puts up, and have a look at the Blackboard, and I'm assuming that there's going to be some clips for you to watch as well. So that's really important. Anything else that you wanted to know? Okay, so what we'll do is I'm going to unshare the PowerPoint like we do at this time, and I'm going to put it into Brady Bunch view, and I'm also going to, of course, stop the recording, and I will go away and give you the opportunity to have a chat. You might want to talk about what's happening at the moment. You might want to talk about, well, for those students this morning, I guess they would probably have wanted to talk about the move to online learning. You know, for some of you students, especially those that are at home, not so much for everyone in the learning forum tonight, because they're experienced Zoomers, and online learning is very much a part of their time at QUT, at university. But for those of you that it's, you know, it might be new to you, it can be a bit of a challenge, a bit of a learning curve. But I guess the most important thing to remember is that it will get much easier, and you'll become more familiar with it. And I have a feeling that we're going to be like this online for a little while to come. So I think it's something that we're all going to have to live with for now. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. So good evening to everyone listening at home.